This is a replicated nursery, my toys, the dolls, the crib, the wallpaper was...
Every year, over 600,000 people pass through the gates of Graceland, eager to walk the same floors where Elvis Presley once lived. They photograph the jungle room, marvel at his jumpsuits, and stand in reverent silence before his grave. But there's one part of the mansion no visitor has ever seen, and never will. For nearly 50 years, that upstairs has remained completely sealed. No tours, no cameras, no exceptions. What's up there? And why has the Presley family kept it locked away from the world since August, since his demise? Join us as we reveal the disturbing reasons why no one is allowed upstairs. Elvis's sanctuary. Graceland isn't just a house, it's a monument frozen between two worlds. Downstairs, everything gleams with the theatrical excess Elvis loved. The mirrored walls of the music room, the waterfall in the jungle room, the peacock-stained glass dividing the living room from the dining area. Gold records line the walls. The television room holds 3 screens side by side because Elvis wanted to watch multiple shows at once. Every surface tells the story of a man who transformed American culture, who became larger than life itself. But upstairs, that was different. The second floor of Graceland was Elvis's true home, the only place in the world where he wasn't Elvis, the king of rock and roll. While fans gathered at the gates and photographers camped on Elvis Presley Boulevard, the upstairs remained his sanctuary from the relentless machinery of fame. He'd retreat there in the early morning hours after recording sessions or performances, exhausted from being the person everyone else needed him to be. His routine was sacred. He'd make late-night phone calls to friends, his voice low and contemplative. He'd read, not fan mail or scripts, but books on spirituality, philosophy, and religion. He was deeply fascinated by the mysteries of life and death, filling shelves with texts on meditation and Eastern philosophy. The television was always on, often showing old westerns or gospel programs. He'd sit in bed, remote in hand, flipping channels while the rest of Memphis slept. The upstairs held his daughter Lisa Marie's bedroom, decorated in soft pinks and whites, filled with toys and dolls. His own master suite featured dark wood furniture, thick carpet, and an ensuite bathroom where he kept his medications and reading material. His massive walk-in closet held hundreds of jumpsuits, capes, and custom-made stagewear, the armor he wore for the public. But even Elvis's closest friends knew the unspoken rule: you didn't go upstairs unless explicitly invited. Members of the Memphis Mafia, his loyal inner circle, would wait downstairs, sometimes for hours, until Elvis emerged. The upstairs wasn't just private, it was almost sacred. It represented the last fragment of normalcy in a life that hadn't become entirely public property. Priscilla Presley later described it as his fortress of solitude, a place where he could be vulnerable, tired, human. The bathroom had a phone installed. He'd often conduct entire conversations while soaking in the tub. The bedroom windows had blackout curtains. Elvis had suffered from insomnia for years and needed complete darkness to sleep during the day. This wasn't just a bedroom suite, it was the psychological refuge of a man who'd been worshipped, scrutinized, and consumed by millions. Upstairs, Elvis Presley could simply be Elvis, and after August 16, 1977, it would remain exactly as he left it, forever. That privacy Elvis so carefully guarded in life would become an iron rule in death. The sanctity he created for himself would transform into something else entirely. A sealed tomb, a mystery, a boundary that even his most devoted fans would never be allowed to cross. The day Elvis died. August 15, 1977, began like many of Elvis's final days. He was exhausted, unable to sleep, physically deteriorating. At 42 years old, Elvis was a shadow of the young man who'd once electrified audiences. Years of prescription use, poor diet, and the crushing weight of fame had taken their toll. His face was bloated, his movements slow, but he was still Elvis, still planning his next tour, still believing he could reclaim his throne. That evening, he visited his dentist for a routine appointment. Afterward, he returned to Graceland with his fiancée, 20-year-old Ginger Alden. They went upstairs together around 10:30 p.m. Elvis tried to sleep but couldn't. He made phone calls. He reportedly talked with Ginger about their upcoming tour dates, about getting married. about the future. Around 2 a.m., Elvis was still wide awake. Insomnia had plagued him for years, worsened by his irregular schedule and dependence on sedatives. He was restless, uncomfortable. He told Ginger he was going to the bathroom to read, something he did frequently when he couldn't sleep. Ginger fell asleep in the bedroom. Hours passed. When she woke around 2 p.m. on August 16th, 14 hours later, Elvis still hadn't come back to bed. The bathroom door was slightly ajar. She called out to him. No response. She pushed the door open. Elvis was on the floor, face down on the thick shag carpet, his arms tucked beneath him. His body was stiff and discolored. Ginger screamed. Within moments, the upstairs of Graceland erupted into chaos. Staff members rushed up the stairs, breaking the sacred rule Elvis himself had enforced. Joe Esposito, Elvis's road manager and close friend, tried desperately to revive him, performing CPR on the bathroom floor. Someone called an ambulance. Someone else called Elvis's personal physician, Dr. George Nikopoulos. The paramedics arrived at 2:33 p.m. They found Elvis's body cold and rigid. Rigor mortis had already set in. He'd likely been dead for hours, possibly since the early morning. But Dr. Nikopoulos insisted they try to revive him anyway. They loaded Elvis onto a stretcher and carried him down the staircase, past the gold records and mirrored walls, out through the front door he'd entered thousands of times before. At Baptist Memorial Hospital, doctors worked frantically for 30 minutes, but it was futile. At 3:30 p.m., Elvis Presley was pronounced dead. The official cause, cardiac arrhythmia and irregular heartbeat. But the autopsy would later reveal a toxic cocktail of drugs in his system: codeine, Valium, morphine, Demerol, and several others. His colon was impacted. His liver showed damage. His arteries were hardened. Elvis hadn't just died. His body had been shutting down for years. But the world didn't need those details immediately. What mattered was the impossible truth. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, the man who seemed immortal, was gone. And he had died alone, upstairs, in the most private sanctuary of Graceland. In the hours and days that followed, the Presley family made a decision. The upstairs, the site of Elvis's final moments, the place where he'd collapsed, where paramedics had desperately tried to save him, would be closed. Permanently. It wasn't a museum piece. It wasn't a tourist attraction. It was sacred ground, soaked in grief and tragedy. No one would go up there again. Not fans, not press, not even most of the staff. The upstairs would be frozen exactly as Elvis left it that morning. The bed unmade, the book on the floor, the television still plugged in. A time capsule of August 16, 1977. And nearly 5 decades later, it remains that way still. By 1981, Graceland was in trouble. The estate was hemorrhaging money. Property taxes alone were over $500,000 a year. The staff needed salaries. Maintenance costs were staggering. Elvis's fortune, once estimated at $10 million, was dwindling fast. His ex-wife, Priscilla Presley, who'd become executor of the estate on behalf of their daughter Lisa Marie, faced an impossible choice: sell Graceland or find a way to make it sustainable. She chose the unthinkable. She opened Elvis's home to the public. A museum with locked doors. On June 7, 1982, Graceland officially became a museum. Priscilla had spent months preparing for the transformation, working with designers and curators to preserve the home's authenticity while making it accessible to visitors. She wanted people to feel like they were walking through Elvis's actual house, not a sterile exhibit, but a living snapshot of how he'd lived. The response was overwhelming. On opening day, over 3,000 people lined up outside the gates. They came from all over the world, crying, praying, clutching photographs of Elvis. Some had traveled thousands of miles just to stand in the rooms where their idol had once stood. The line stretched down Elvis Presley Boulevard, a pilgrimage of grief and devotion. Inside, visitors moved through the mansion in hushed reverence. They saw the living room where Elvis hosted parties. They marveled at the jungle room with its green shag carpet crawling up the ceiling and Polynesian-style furniture. They stood in the music room where he'd played piano late into the night. They walked through the TV room with its yellow decor and multiple screens. Everything was preserved exactly as Elvis had left it. The furniture, the gold records, even the telephones. But when the tour reached the foyer, At the base of the curved staircase leading to the second floor, it stopped. A velvet rope stretched across the bottom step. A small sign read, "Private." No entry tour guides would pause there, allowing visitors to gaze up at the staircase, the white carpet, the dark wooden banister, the landing at the top, disappearing into shadow. They could see the first few steps, but that was all. Beyond that landing lay Elvis's bedroom, Lisa Marie's room, his office, his bathroom, the most intimate spaces of his life. And no one was allowed up there, ever. Priscilla had been firm about this from the beginning. The upstairs was not part of the tour. It was not part of the museum. It would remain exactly as it had been since August 16, 1977, private, untouched, sealed. That upstairs is where Elvis lived his most personal life. It's where he died. It's sacred to them. Even the cleaning staff weren't permitted beyond the landing. In the early years, only Priscilla and a select few estate managers ever ventured up those stairs, and only for preservation purposes, checking for leaks, monitoring temperature and humidity, ensuring nothing deteriorated. For visitors, the velvet rope became one of the most powerful moments of the tour. People would stand at the base of the staircase, staring upward, tears streaming down their faces. They were as close to Elvis's final moments as they would ever be, and yet an impossible distance away. Some would reach out as if to touch the banister, then pull back, respecting the boundary. Tour guides reported that visitors often asked the same questions. "What's up there? Can we see it? Just a quick look?" The answer was always the same: no. Over the years, that refusal only deepened the mystery. Graceland became one of the most visited private homes in America, second only to the White House in annual visitors. But the upstairs remained untouchable. Millions of people walked through Elvis's home, yet the most important part of it stayed hidden. The staircase became a symbol, a threshold between the public Elvis and the private man. Downstairs, you could celebrate his legend. Upstairs, locked away forever, was his humanity. And the longer it stayed closed, the more people wondered, what exactly is up there? And why can't we ever see it? Imagine walking into a room that hasn't been touched in nearly 50 years. The air is still. Dust particles hover in thin beams of light filtering through blackout curtains. Everything sits exactly where it was left on August 16, 1977, as if the person who lived there simply stepped out and never came back. Preserved in time. That's what exists at the top of Graceland's staircase. According to the few people who've been granted access, estate archivists, preservation specialists, and immediate family members, the upstairs of Graceland is a perfectly frozen moment in time. It's not a recreation. It's not a display. It's the actual living space of Elvis Presley, untouched and unchanged since the day he died. In the master bedroom, the bed reportedly remains unmade, the sheets and blankets rumpled from where Ginger Alden slept that final night. Elvis's reading glasses rest on the nightstand, alongside books on spirituality and religion that he'd been studying. The television, a bulky 1970s model, still sits across from the bed, its screen dark, but its presence commanding. Elvis had spent countless sleepless nights in that bed, remote in hand, flipping channels until exhaustion finally overtook him. The thick shag carpeting, popular in the 70s, covers the bedroom floor in deep red. According to those who have been granted access, the walls are painted in dark, masculine tones, burgundy and brown. Heavy curtains block out the Memphis sun, creating the perpetual twilight Elvis needed to sleep during daylight hours. His closet, expansive and meticulously organized, still holds rows of jumpsuits, capes, and stage costumes, each one a piece of armor he wore to face the world. Lisa Marie's childhood bedroom remains a snapshot of the 1970s. She was only 9 years old when her father died, and the room preserves that moment of interrupted childhood when her entire world changed in an instant. The bathroom, the site of Elvis's final moments, is perhaps the most haunting space. The book he was reading still lies nearby, a bookmark holding his place in a passage he'll never finish. The floor where paramedics found him remains covered in the same thick carpet. The toilet, the sink, the bathtub, all original fixtures from 1977. It's a deeply personal space that became the scene of an unimaginable tragedy. Graceland's preservation team monitors the upstairs with scientific precision. Temperature controls keep the air at a constant 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Dehumidifiers run continuously to prevent mold and decay. The windows are sealed to protect fabrics and photographs from UV damage. Every few months, archivists venture upstairs to check for structural issues, pest problems, or any signs of deterioration. But they don't clean, they don't rearrange, they don't update. The upstairs exists in what preservation experts call arrested decay, a state where time has effectively stopped. The goal isn't to restore or improve, it's to prevent any further change. Every book, every piece of furniture, every personal item remains precisely where Elvis left it. One archivist, speaking anonymously years ago, described the experience of being up there. It's eerie. You expect Elvis to walk through the door at any moment. His cologne bottles are still on the dresser. His medications are still in the bathroom cabinet. There are notes he wrote to himself, phone numbers scribbled on scraps of paper. It feels intrusive, like you're trespassing in someone's private space because you are. The psychological impact of preserving the space this way is profound. Downstairs, Graceland celebrates Elvis's life, his music, his style, his charisma, his impact on culture. But upstairs confronts visitors with his absence. It's a shrine not to his legend, but to his mortality. Priscilla Presley has said the decision to keep it sealed was about respect and grief. That was his private space, she explained in interviews over the years. It's where he was most himself, most vulnerable. Opening it to the public would feel like a violation, not just of his memory, but of his dignity. Lisa Marie, before her own death in 2023, echoed this sentiment. She described the upstairs as sacred ground, a place where her father's spirit still resided. For her, keeping it closed wasn't about creating mystery. It was about preserving the last fragment of her father that remained untouched by the world's consumption. And so the upstairs remains, a tomb of carpet and curtains, a museum within a museum that no one will ever visit. The decision to seal the upstairs wasn't made lightly. It was a vow, a sacred promise between those who loved Elvis most. And for nearly 5 decades, that promise has been kept with unwavering resolve. The family's promise. Lisa Marie Presley, who inherited Graceland when she turned 25 in 1993, made it abundantly clear throughout her life the upstairs would remain off-limits, period. In interviews, she spoke about it with a mixture of protectiveness and reverence, describing the space as more than just a collection of rooms. It was the last place where her father's presence remained untainted by fame, speculation, or commercialization. "It's a sacred place," Lisa Marie said in a 2012 interview. "It's where my father lived and where he died. Some things should remain private, and that's one of them. I'm very protective of that space, always will be." She wasn't alone in that conviction. Priscilla Presley, despite being the driving force behind opening Graceland to the public, drew a firm line at the staircase. She understood that for the museum to work, for Elvis's legacy to be preserved, the house needed to remain a home, not a completely exposed relic. The upstairs represented the boundary between public celebration and private mourning. "We didn't want Graceland to feel like a cold museum," Priscilla explained in various interviews over the years. "We wanted it to feel like Elvis's home, and every home has private spaces. The upstairs is ours, mine, Lisa Marie's, the family's. It's where we can still feel connected to him in a way that's personal, not performative." Only a handful of people have been granted access since 1977. Immediate family members, Priscilla, Lisa Marie, and later Lisa Marie's children, have been up there, though rarely. Estate archivists and preservation specialists enter periodically, but only when absolutely necessary and always under strict confidentiality agreements. No photographs, no descriptions, no violations of trust. The family has described the upstairs as a resting place for his spirit, not in a supernatural sense, but in a deeply emotional one. It's where Elvis's essence remains most concentrated, most authentic. Downstairs, he was Elvis Presley, the performer, the icon, the king. Upstairs, he was just a man, tired, vulnerable, human. This creates a fascinating philosophical tension. By keeping the upstairs sealed, the Presley family has inadvertently made Elvis more human and more mythical at the same time. The secrecy preserves his dignity, protecting him from the voyeuristic consumption that often follows celebrity deaths. But it also fuels endless speculation. transforming an ordinary bedroom suite into something almost mystical. Some critics have questioned the decision over the years. Why not open it? Why not let the world see every part of Elvis's life? Wouldn't transparency honor his memory more than secrecy? But the family has remained steadfast. There's a difference, they argue, between celebrating someone's life and exploiting their death. In various interviews over the years, Lisa Marie expressed that the public had already seen so much of her father's life, his performances, his possessions, and his legacy displayed throughout Graceland. The upstairs, she maintained, was one of the few things that could remain truly private, truly theirs. The upstairs isn't a secret they're hiding, it's a boundary they're defending. It represents the last place where Elvis Presley, the man, can exist without the weight of Elvis Presley, the legend. It's where the family can remember him as a father, an ex-husband, a son, not as a commodity. And that boundary they've promised will never be crossed. Not for money, not for curiosity, not for closure. Myth and conspiracies. When you seal off a room where a legend died, you don't just preserve history, you create mythology. And in the case of Graceland's upstairs, that mythology has grown wild, dark, and utterly consuming. The most persistent theory? Elvis never died. He faked his death and still lives upstairs. It sounds absurd, but for decades, a devoted subset of fans has clung to this belief with religious fervor. They point to supposed inconsistencies, the misspelling of his middle name on his original grave marker. It read Aaron instead of Aaron. The allegedly waxy appearance of his body in the casket, the fact that his death was announced so quickly. Some claim Elvis wanted to escape the crushing pressure of fame and staged his own death with the help of the FBI, then retreated to the sealed upstairs where he's lived in secret ever since. Online forums exploded with elaborate theories. Fans claimed to have seen lights flickering in the upstairs windows late at night. Others reported shadows moving behind the curtains. Some insisted they heard footsteps on the second floor during tours, slow, deliberate pacing, as if someone was walking from room to room. Graceland officials have dismissed these claims repeatedly, explaining that the upstairs contains working plumbing and electrical systems that require periodic maintenance. But rational explanations rarely satisfy those who want to believe. Other theories are even more elaborate. Some claim the upstairs contains secret tunnels, passageways Elvis used to leave Graceland undetected, either to visit lovers, conduct clandestine meetings, or simply escape. These tunnels, believers insist, are why the family keeps the upstairs sealed, not to preserve Elvis's memory, but to hide the evidence of his secret escape routes. Another popular theory suggests the upstairs house is a hidden recording studio where Elvis made secret albums in his final years, music so personal, so raw, that the family has kept it locked away. Fans speculate about unreleased tracks, confessional recordings, even video footage of Elvis in his most vulnerable moments. Then there are the darker theories, ones that venture into the macabre. Some believe the upstairs contains evidence of Elvis's drug use that the family wants suppressed, prescription bottles, syringes, substances that would tarnish his image. Others whisper about occult items, Elvis's well-documented interest in spirituality, twisted into rumors of seances, mysticism, and supernatural experimentation. The bathroom in particular has become the focus of morbid fascination. Tabloids have published floor plans, some accurate, some completely fabricated, showing exactly where Elvis's body was found. Paranormal enthusiasts claim the bathroom is spiritually active, that Elvis's spirit remains trapped there, reliving his final moments in an endless loop. Graceland is haunted, proclaimed numerous paranormal investigation shows over the years. And the most haunted part is the place no one can go, upstairs. Some visitors report feeling overwhelming sadness when standing at the base of the staircase. Others describe sudden chills, unexplained anxiety, or the sensation of being watched. Skeptics dismiss these as the power of suggestion. People feel what they expect to feel in a place associated with death and tragedy. But believers insist something genuinely supernatural lingers at the top of those stairs. Why do these theories thrive? Because mystery breeds mythology. The human mind abhors a vacuum. When we can't see something, we imagine it. And in the case of Elvis Presley, whose life was consumed by public scrutiny, The sealed upstairs represents the ultimate unknown. The Presley family's silence only feeds the fire. They don't address the conspiracy theories. They don't release photographs or detailed descriptions of what's upstairs. They don't engage with the speculation at all. This refusal to explain, to defend, to justify creates an information vacuum that conspiracy theorists eagerly fill. And the internet has amplified everything, creating elaborate theories backed by evidence, grainy photographs, alleged insider testimonies, architectural analyses claiming to prove the existence of hidden rooms. Some theories are harmless fun, fans playing detective, indulging in wishful thinking that their hero somehow survived. But others cross into darker territory, accusing the Presley family of greed, cover-ups, or even criminal negligence. The upstairs is sealed because a man died there, and his family wanted to preserve his dignity. But simple truths rarely satisfy. We want mystery. We want intrigue. We want Elvis to be more than human. And so the myths persist, growing more elaborate with each passing year, fed by the one thing Graceland will never give us: access. Realities behind the mystery. Beyond the mythology and emotion, there are mundane, practical reasons why Graceland's upstairs has remained closed to the public for nearly 50 years. The truth is far less mysterious than conspiracy theorists want to believe, but no less significant. First, there's the simple matter of space and safety. The staircase leading to the second floor is narrow, built for a private residence in the 1950s, not for tourist traffic. The steps are steep, the banister relatively delicate. Imagine hundreds of visitors per day climbing those stairs, touching the walls, gripping the railings. The wear and tear would be catastrophic. The upstairs itself consists of only a few rooms: Elvis's master bedroom, his bathroom, his office area, Lisa Marie's childhood bedroom, and some storage spaces. These rooms are relatively small, with narrow hallways connecting them. There's simply no way to accommodate the flow of visitors that Graceland receives, over 600,000 annually. The bottleneck would be impossible to manage. Tour groups would back up, wait times would become unbearable, and the intimate nature of the space would be destroyed by the sheer volume of foot traffic. Then there's the issue of structural integrity. The flooring upstairs consists of original hardwood and thick shag carpeting from the 70s. These materials, while preserved, are fragile. Constant foot traffic would damage the carpet fibers, wear down the wood, and compromise the authenticity of the space. Unlike the downstairs, which has been reinforced and maintained for public access, the upstairs was never designed to withstand commercial use. Preservation is another critical factor. The upstairs contains original fabrics, papers, books, and personal items that are extremely sensitive to environmental changes. Every time a door opens, humidity levels shift. Every additional body in a room raises the temperature and introduces moisture from breath and skin. Preservation specialists work tirelessly to maintain stable conditions: constant temperature, controlled humidity, minimal light exposure. Opening the space to public tours would make this preservation work nearly impossible. Fire safety codes present another obstacle. Modern commercial spaces require multiple exits, sprinkler systems, clearly marked emergency routes, and accessibility features for people with disabilities. The upstairs of Graceland meets none of these requirements, and retrofitting it would destroy its historical authenticity. Installing modern safety equipment would mean tearing into walls, replacing floors, and fundamentally altering the space Elvis knew. Then there's the matter of digital preservation. Graceland's archivists have extensively photographed and documented the upstairs for historical records. These digital archives serve multiple purposes. They allow researchers and historians to study the space without physically entering it. They provide a backup in case of catastrophe, and they satisfy the estate's obligation to preserve Elvis's legacy for future generations. The irony is profound. The most advanced preservation technology exists to keep the upstairs frozen in 1977. Climate sensors, humidity monitors, security cameras, all working to ensure that nothing changes, nothing decays, nothing moves. It's a high-tech tomb maintaining a low-tech time capsule. The upstairs remains sealed, not because of conspiracy or cruelty, but because of cold, practical reality. Some spaces simply cannot accommodate the weight of public curiosity. Some doors must stay closed, not to hide secrets, but to preserve what remains. And so the mystery endures. At the top of those stairs lies the truth about Elvis Presley. Not the legend in the jumpsuit, but the man in his pajamas. The upstairs remains what it's always been, the last place on earth where Elvis could simply exist. Graceland's velvet rope isn't hiding secrets. It's protecting something far more precious, the final fragment of privacy in a life that belonged to everyone but himself.